The denial of bail to Bauchi State's finance commissioner and a former minister of justice has sparked fresh debate over governance, investor confidence, and fiscal stability at the subnational level. Analysts say the case highlights the judiciary's tougher stance on high-profile financial crimes, while raising concerns about potential disruption to budgeting, revenue administration, and capital projects. Market watchers are also assessing the possible impact on Bauchi's creditworthiness, borrowing cost, and relations with lenders and development partners. Beyond Bauchi, the development is prompting wider questions about institutional continuity, checks and balances, and whether stronger transparency, audits, and compliance frameworks are needed across states to reassure investors and sustain economic stability amid legal accountability. Liborous Oshoma, lawyer and public affairs analyst, joins me now to break this down. Thank you for your time and good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you.
And looking at what's happening now with the courts, what does the court's decision to deny bail signal about the gravity of the allegations and the judiciary's current posture on high-profile financial cases?
Yeah, mind you, there are two cases here, or if you add the one for Malemi, that will make it three. For the Bauchi Commissioner for Finance, there are two charges. He was the one bordering on money laundering, he was granted bail. That was on Friday. The one on terrorism financing, that was the one the court denied bail. So that we don't confuse the issues. The one on money laundering, naturally, courts granted bail and with stringent terms, property owner in Asokoro, Mitama, all of that. But for terrorism financing, the searchlight had been on Nigeria for some time, since Trump tweets on Nigeria and genocide and the killings here. And Trump asking the federal government to put its acts in order. So a lot of us also have argued that there's need to not just go after the pawns in this insecurity, but to go out after those that are, said to be financing, terrorism by virtue of the Terrorism Prevention Act. So in that regard, the court took cognizance of the fact that when national security is concerned, as laid down in the case of by the Supreme Court in 2001 in Bameyi's case and the state, that the court must also look at the gravity of the offense, the likely, what do you call it now, the likely, terms upon conviction, and then also the proof of evidence in the matter in determining bail. So, and the court, in its wisdom, has held that looking at the issue of national security and the proof of evidence before him, especially the testimony of one of the prosecution witness, Abdul Mumuni, that certainly it would be prejudicial to the prosecution's case to grant bail at this stage, which is, in normal circumstances, ordinarily shouldn't raise doubt. But the question here, we play politics with everything, is that the Bauchi State is governed by an opposition party. And so why Bauchi? Why Bauchi? And then the tendency for the government to say, well, this thing is happening to me because I refuse to decamp into the ruling party. But the next question would be, excuse me, are the allegations true? If the allegations are true, why don't you have your day cut rather than play politics with it? So I think it is one of the ways the government is actually trying to go after sponsors of terrorism to boost investors' confidence in the system, rather than just going after, those bandits and the pawns that are being used by the financiers. And one of the allegation is that the Commissioner for Finance, sometimes between May and June last year, did pay out, the sum of about $2 million, to certain persons that was used to finance terrorism, including Meatiala. So, if truly these allegations are true, and the federal government is able to prosecute this to a logical conclusion, it truly means that, terrorism, those that are financing terrorists in the country will certainly, their day, of their comeuppance is gradually coming, and their day of reckoning is actually coming also. So, but if you also look at, like I said, if you also look at the flip side of it, you look at the political angle of it, is it only Bauchi State that, that you have people who are financing terrorism? How about other states that are being governed by the ruling party at the center? Why can't we beam our searchlight, in those areas?
I think it colors the situation a bit when that conversation begins to come up that perhaps it's a political witch hunt. But let's see how this progresses. We also, what has been highlighted as well, and not just now, but in previous instances where these allegations have been made, the role of BDC operators and POS operators in this terrorism financing. What are your thoughts on that, and what kind of regulation or scrutiny do we need to see within that area?
I know that the EFCC have what they call, I can't really remember the name now, but it's a system whereby BDC operators file, regularly their returns or their customers and the exchange made with them to the Economic and Financial Crime Commission. Because what surely happens here is that we also know that once applications are paid to states, unlike when the allocations were paid in dollars, once they are paid in naira, this currency, this naira is moved to BDCs, and then in exchange for dollars, and because it is easy to pay out dollars and there are no traces. But so against that backdrop, the EFCC had come up with a system to ensure that there are checks. And just one of those checks is to make sure that, anybody that is exchanging, forex for a particular tune, I think about $10,000 or more, they have records of those persons and they must file those records with EFCC, just like the banks do. But for the POS, there are no mechanisms such as that where funds are paid to POS operators and the funds are paid out without traces because it is cash. Not too long ago, there was a transaction someone had in Abuja, and it was about 10 million naira. And the account that was given, and the man was shocked. And he said that when he did his finding, he discovered that it was a POS account for a land transaction and a rental transaction. And he was shocked. He was surprised that why would I be paying money to a POS transaction? And so he further checks revealed that actually those that wanted to rent out that house were not the actual owners of the house. So if he had paid that money to the POS operators, imagine a POS operator paying out a cash of 10 million naira. And then you begin to wonder, where do they find this money? You find out that some people also come to deposit such huge amount with them in cash, especially people that are also doing BDCs when people still move cash. So there is need for the Economic and Financial Crime Commission to look into, these areas where POS operators are able to pay out, huge cash in that regard. I remember last year, the CBN tried to regulate the POS operators and register them so that it becomes very easy to also trace accounts that are used for POS operation. So once that happened, the transfer limits, there can be transfer limits and restrictions. So it becomes difficult to move out such cards. And also, we've also seen situations where fraudsters here who, including ransom, are paid using POS operators. So, and this is one of such, areas also that the Economic and Financial Crime Commission is looking at. For me, the lesson and the learning point for all of this is not just enough to prosecute those who are financing terrorism. It's not just enough to also arrest. There should be mechanism to make it impossible for these funds to be used, or for these funds to be transferred in any manner whatsoever to finance terrorism. Once you make it impossible, then you would have nipped it in the bud. Then there wouldn't be need to even look for people who are funding terrorism, because it would be a practical impossibility to fund it because the restrictions are watertight.
So, I mean, let's hope that the reforms we are seeing in those areas are followed through and make it more stringent for the financing through those means. Let's also come to, we know that terrorism is not just a Nigeria problem, it's a regional problem, and there's a whole web knitting things together. We know we have the EFCC and, Nigeria Financial Intelligence Units and other bodies who are scrutinizing and investigating and making findings, but is there a role and what is the role of international cooperation in disrupting terrorism financing even here in Nigeria, or do you believe that we are able to do that here independently?
There is no way you can stop terrorism financing independently. You must have collaborations and synergies with other countries. And I like the fact that the West African state, I've forgotten the name now, it's what they call it, headed by our own EFCC chairman. They have a collaboration, they have a group. All the anti-graft agencies in West African states, they have a synergy, they have a group. Recently, I was privileged to attend one of their meetings in Abuja at the ECOWAS house. And that was when I think sometimes in November or so, October and November, thereabout, where they had, I think in 3 or 4 days, a seminar on ways, creating innovative ways for collaboration amongst the West African states. That one is a welcome development, and especially considering the fact that since the fall of Gaddafi in Libya, there's been, there's been the allegation of massive, arms movement around the Sahel region, all the way through Mali to Nigeria and Nigeria to Nigeria. So there's need for not just collaboration at the West African level, but at also the AU level. And I also know that the Interpol also, because recently I had some matters there that have to do with, advanced fee fraud from China and Japan. I know also the Interpol has a level of collaboration at that level across board. So it's just that I do not know how deep these, synergies are, and I do not know how much of it we have really been able to create here to ensure this, because the process is still very manual. My challenges, with some of the matters that I've handled is that the process is still very manual. One would have expected that by now, with digital age, you have a lot of, digitalization of these processes. Because remember recently, Saudi Arabia, denied entry visa to Sheikh Gumi. Was it last year? Sometimes last year. So when you have all of those kind of synergy, where not just visa restrictions, where you also have a click of the buttons, the banks can have these informations, and then once the bank have these informations, restrictions will be placed, in terms of movement of money and the rest. And so it becomes very easy for information to be shared across board, not just within, but across globe and across region. So when that happens, would have taken a very huge step in curbing terrorism financing. But otherwise, what we're having now is just a drop in the ocean, no matter how much we want to eulogize it. But it's still better than what we had before, when there were no collaborations at all.
So we need stronger collaborations across the continent, across the region, and across the globe. Yes. And we know that the West, specifically the US, is somewhat trying to offer a helping hand, some will say. They have said that they're going to name terrorist financiers in Nigeria. What are your thoughts around that?
You remember, even not just in the US, in Dubai, sometimes during the administration of General Muhammadu Buhari, there were some names that were bandied around as names released by the government in the UAE as alleged terrorist financiers. I wonder what the federal government then did with those names. And the allegations of the U.S., I would, a lot of people are taking that with a pinch of salt, that the U.S. never gives you anything, free without demanding an arm and a leg in return. But I can tell you with what the EFCC is doing with the Bauchi case, I can tell you that a lot of these financiers are known to the government. It's just that we act only when, there is a threat from these people, political threat from these people. And I think the government is basically acting now because of the elections around the corner. And, like I said earlier on, maybe heat from the US, and then coupled with the fact that, these are happening in opposition state. Otherwise, with the information, the restriction, even the little restrictions we have in the bank, and the filings from the BDCs to the CBN, especially, and the EFCC, especially now that the number of registered BDCs have dropped drastically, and it is easy for government to monitor and control, I can tell you that government has, all of this information because, like they say in the financial markets, follow the money, or financial investigation, follow the money. So when they follow this money, they will always, discover where it went to, in as far as the terrorism finance is concerned. So if we're able to harness the information at our disposal, we can solve our problem 60% before we now begin to talk about those names coming from America. Just like the Halliburton scandal, while everybody was prosecuted in Europe, those that were named in Nigeria till date, went away scot-free. So what's the guarantee that even when these people are named in Nigeria, or the US release names, just like it happened with the UAE, that these people would actually, if they are not in the ruling party, if they are in the ruling party, that certainly the government will be, this forceful in prosecuting them. So that's the fear. That's why I say that the information that we have, we can actually, win mileage 60% before we begin to talk about the names that are being released. I don't think there's any name that will be given to us today that the government does not already have intel on. But it's just that politically, we are scared. Religious-wise, we don't also want to rock the boat. So those are some of the inhibitions that we have here, and the fact that everything that happens here will read politics into it.
I mean, surely there's some danger in that, but as you have pointed out, it's a delicate situation. Hopefully they're able to navigate it and fulfill their mandate of securing lives and property. Thank you so much for your time and perspective on the show today. Liborous Oshoma, lawyer and public affairs analyst.
Always my pleasure. Thank you.